missing one thing. I have to go and load in the plugin. So I can just treat the element as if it's a full-blown jQuery object and call tooltip on it, which is just as the docs suggest that you do. So let's make a span with tooltip attribute, and title says moment of truth. So, in most cases, I think it's going to be super easy to implement a lot of the plugins that you use. You can even do stuff where you, the options hashes that you would have passed into those. You can just use the attributes from your directive and put them into the scope. You can create smart defaults and pass them in. Any questions?
You can inspect the generated source.
The generated source?
See how the jQuery.
Pardon?
So we can see the way that it implemented the jQuery.
So that is actually jQuery running. So once you include jQuery in your project, Angular will not boot its jQuery light.
When you create a specific scope and direct it based on the scope and the controller, then you go out the data binding?
No, so it actually maintains the data binding. I can show you that. Has everyone, maybe not, there's this great plugin called Batarang, and lets you inspect. What's going on here? Lets you inspect the scopes, but it seems busted. That's great. Let me try to prove this to you. Batarang lets you, if you just inspect elements, now you can have access to this scope. So here's the awesome things array. So in my code, if I when I'm invoking scope from there, it's not from inside the directive, it's from inside the scope of the controller. So it is maintaining the data.
Specific scope in the directive.
Yeah, so if you use the equals notation, that will maintain the data binding as well.
Are there any tricky situations where jQuery plugin would be very difficult to integrate?
So I'm mainly talking about the jQuery plugins that enhance markup with behavior, and that's what Angular directives solve, is you're adding behavior onto existing markup. So I think they'll be pretty simple to convert any plugin that does that type of thing. But if you're trying to, you know, if it's like a network communication thing, say it's like you can't put socket.io in a directive because it doesn't belong there. But you can put it in a service.
You mentioned that you can just access the address variable directly.
Yeah.
And is that considered bad Angular to do that as opposed to setting up your scope variable?
Its scope is more long term, right? The one thing to point out here is the only difference between the link function and the compile function is that the compile function doesn't have access to your scope. So you can actually, if there's anything that you need to do like once beforehand, if it can access the attributes, then but you don't want them in scope, you can do that.
I have a question regarding validate HTML. We're going to validate the proof that we have to use the dash.
Oh, yes. Yes, good question. So the question is that this is not valid HTML right now, right? So Angular supports you putting any of the common prefixes to make it work. So I can actually put data-tooltip, and it works. I can put x-tooltip. It's supposed to work. But you can put data dash in front of it and it'll always work, and that's to make it valid HTML. Is that your question?
That was the question. So that you don't have to put the data dash tooltip in the directive name.
Oh, sorry. It's missing that. In the directive name,
Right?
here, yeah, you don't have to do it there. Another thing that Angular will do is that you should camel case your directive names, but it'll transform it into dash case for you as a directive to match the style of, you know, in HTML it's usually dash case, but in JavaScript it's usually camel case. Any other questions? Cool.
Cool.
Well, 1 second. There's some really good resources out there other than the Angular docs. There's a new video series out called egghead.io. They're like little 5-minute videos on different topics on Angular. There's also a new-ish project called Angular UI, which is a whole bunch of really awesome directives that you can take advantage of. There are also really good patterns about how to write and test your own directives as well. So if you are ever have a question about style or how do I make this more testable, check out the Angular UI components, and hopefully they'll lead the way. There's also 2 great talks from the Angular team about writing directives and testing directives. And I highly suggest that if you are going to write any Angular, that you check out all of these things. Yeah, and you can tinyurl jQueryTO Angular. You can get these slides.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thanks, Alex.